each of us has a beautiful, special power. And it's in not trying to write the book that everyone else has already written. It's in expressing your own self in the most unique and beautiful way that you can.
Welcome, everybody. Okay, what does it take to become a New York Times bestseller? And what support and where do you go to get there? My guest, publisher and mentor, and yes, Wall Street Journal and New York Times bestseller. I have Bridget Cook Birch on the show. Birch. Yes. Welcome to the show. About time.
Hello, it's so wonderful to see you and so wonderful to be on here. I've had so many of my authors that just rave about you.
Okay, let's get into it. Bridget, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. The list is there. Tell people who you are. And by the way, the magic behind all those that you got to bring forward.
Thank you. Well, a little bit of magic behind. I'm a spark, and I have provided systems through the years for other people to be able to reach national and international best-selling status of their own, and at times New York Times and Wall Street Journal, depending on the story. And so it's my absolute pleasure. My clients call me the book whisperer, just because I have a beautiful ability that I feel is God-given to be able to take what people say and what they've written and to really see the beautiful rises and falls of their heroes and sheroes journey, and to be able to put it on the page in a way that is not only educational and entertaining and inspirational and motivating, but also transformational. And I have seen how stories and books can change the world. And my world has been rocked and changed by stories. And so I love for positive stories, positive messages to really get out into the world. And a lot of times it requires a hell of a lot of courage. And so, it's not little unicorns and rainbow stories, it is underneath, but it's also about, deep, raw, and real experiences of humanity and what we're capable of not just overcoming, but triumphing over. That's what absolutely thrills me.
I love that. So at the end, it's about people standing in their power and voice and you supporting them to bring it forward.
Yes. That's my favorite thing to do. I get so excited when I see an author take the plunge, have the courage, and create something absolutely magical. You better believe it.
Okay, so the question that everyone's tuning in for. So first of all, you don't do it alone, but we'll get into that. But what does it take to be a New York Times bestseller?
Well, for that, it requires an extraordinary story. So something that's rich and compelling, very trendy at the time in the moment, something that's very newsworthy, because that I have seen is what creates a real New York Times bestseller. And so it's usually there's quite a bit of media involved in addition to a really well done story, because you could have media and you have a crap story and then the book won't go anywhere, if the writing is not well done. It just will fall short. But if you have an incredible big reveal story and you have beautiful writing, then you have this magic cocktail that will take it into those realms, and it's a really wonderful thing.
Okay, so it is, and I'm thinking of the YouTube space, that it is also a riveting topic, something that's viral, something that people are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that are out there that have a book in them, that and then bringing that forward, and it may be their own personal journey, it may be their struggle, it may be that inspiration they get to bring forward. That matters too. What do you say that they're like, maybe I don't have a New York Times bestseller, but I get to bring this forward. And what does that look like?
Well, and the beauty of that is that when it's well told, it still has the ability to be a national and international best-selling story. It still has legs and feet if it's written with bestseller quality. And the wonderful thing about that is that it has a long-term, what I like to call evergreen impact on society as well. You know, in this age of Amazon and Ingram Spark and the way that we can distribute and get things out into the world in a much bigger way for a long period of time, it's a wonderful thing. And so, especially for coaches, leaders, speakers, healers, and those even who are just emerging leaders, like, I have a story. I've been told I should write this, and I'm a little trepidatious about, you know, who's going to read it, who will even think that it can have impact. It's extraordinary to watch the author's journey. You know, Maureen, and I know you've seen it, when they finally get courage and go, okay, enough people have told me that I really should write this, and I feel in my gut, you know, I feel in my heart I should write this. And then they put it on paper, and it's like, it's a powerful witness to who they are and where they've been. And then they get some beta readers and make sure that, you know, the quality is really good. And they get testimonials from these beta readers, and they're like, oh, you know, I have something worth sharing. I'm going to get this out in a bigger way. And as you know, we have a team and an ability to launch to that national and sometimes international bestseller. Depends on the story itself. It depends on the level of interest. It depends on what's trending. But there still is that ability to launch. And what's wonderful about that too is, you know, nobody reads a story that they don't know exists. So when you have a tremendous launch, then you have the ability to get out to people that never would have seen you, known you, had an opportunity to read your story, be able to work with you, want to be part of your great social impact. Because we like to create books that create not just readers, but actual movements. So it means that there's some integrous and beautiful change in society as well. And books have the power to do that more than any other thing that I've seen. I love documentaries, I love film, but I've seen the power of books to tell an enormous story in a powerful way. So I love it, because instead of getting little snitches of the truth or mistruth that we get out in the world, we get a full story.
So let's go back to the word courage. And for the audience, people out there are saying, okay, I have a story. Where do I go with it? How do I begin? How do I move forward with the backdrop of courage and what it takes to be courageous, bringing your message forward?
Yeah, well, I would start, courage is important, and it means that you reach out and talk to a few people about your story. It's good to find a mentor who is compassionate, understands the level of courage that you're coming to the table with. They're willing to guide you or assist you in writing a bestseller, because anyone can write an expensive business card. But we're talking about something that has that beautiful impact, right? And so what's wonderful is if you have a beautiful mix of guidance and systems. And that's what your Inspired Story, our company, has really sought to be able to provide, is compassionate but excellent guidance. And then also systems that work. Like, one of the things that I think is most important for a writer with a nonfiction story, and even fiction stories, when I coach people, just because their characters become richer if they have a backstory. But every nonfiction character has incredible amount of backstory that they can draw from when they're writing their memoir or their self-help book or their autobiography, in certain circumstances. And so to have a chronological timeline to input information about themselves, Maureen, I've seen people who have just written stories about themselves, and then they're disjointed and they don't really know how should I put this together. But there's something beautiful that happens when people will write down a chronology, because all of a sudden they have these big realizations, like, oh my heck, when this happened, I made this choice that spurred this whole other thing. And then this happened and this happened. And he said this and she said this. And I went there, and they understand themselves better. And when we understand ourselves better and we're anchored in time and space, we're able to write in an anchored time and space way so that the reader doesn't get lost. Because frankly, the number one reason a reader will put a book down is if they're confused and they don't know where they are in time and space. So when we're clear, the reader is clear. I encourage people to write chronologically. And then if you want to incorporate flashbacks after you're very clear about what happened when and why, especially those big turning points in your rises and falls, we call the trifell cycle, that's when then you can incorporate flashbacks really powerfully when needed. Oftentimes the story doesn't require it, but when needed, you're so anchored in time and space that you don't get the reader messed up. And so that is a wonderful thing. I also recommend that they look at, some simple structural things like the 3-act play. Some of the most marvelous stories on the planet have been put together in the 3-act play sequence. And that helps people to know, how much do I really put in? Maureen, I was talking to the head of an agency, a very highbrow agency. And he said, how do you tell people when you're working with them that not every detail of their lives is important to the reader? And I says, well, first of all, I never tell anyone that, because it is important to them. But what I make sure that they know the clarity of is the first draft is for you, helps you to heal, helps you to know what the heck you want to say in the first place. It's really fantastic to be on that journey. But when you go back to do the rewrite, you need to be thinking about who you're reaching. Who is it that's going to pick up this book that's going to benefit most? And how do you want to hit straight to the pain and then the solutions that your beautiful book provides? And that's the magic is really in the rewrite. So second draft, third draft, sometimes fourth or fifth draft, to have a really great cohesive story. And that's where this beautiful magic happens. And then also one thing I would have people consider is that if you've been downplaying your story, like most of us tend to do, if you're like, oh, I don't really need to go into that, or somebody's reading it and they said, you have so much more power than this. This feels really flat to me. It's usually because we've been told to stay so humble. It's like trimming the poppies, right? In certain cultures, it's like no poppy can have its head above anybody else. And so in our culture, we've had the tendency to do that. But inside of language, there is a way to make your story epic. And that is by not downplaying those epic turning points in your life. And it's about slowing down and really showing us what was happening inside your body, what was happening inside your mind as you got to this really critical point in your life where you had to decide, am I going to lay down like a carpet or a mat, or am I going to get out my sword and shield and fight for what I believe in, take a stand for me and my loved ones and whatever this threat is that's going on, that's happening. And so it's a matter of language and choosing to be epic in a world that needs us to show up as more epic players. And it's not about aggrandizing anything or making anything untruthful. I am never about that. It is always about telling your best story and making sure that you're bringing the reader into your very presence as you're making some of these decisions. And this is where some of the most delightful and compelling and transformational storytelling comes from.
The word that's coming to mind is the word uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's room, right? Books are being published at a record number daily. That at the end of the day, and I'm seeing the same thing with YouTube, that there's still room. Your message matters. Their uniqueness, that matters. Can you lean into that a little bit or extend what you were saying?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, when we When we're doing any kind of creative project, especially a vulnerable one like this, and writing a book is the most creative and also vulnerable art form there is, because you're letting people on the inside of you, right? If you're doing it well. Um, but this uniqueness is what is so amazing, because there could be, let's just say, 5 women speaking about domestic violence and writing their books. And so there would be some thematic elements and some situations that may sound familiar. But what is not familiar, what is so special about each one of those books, and they would all turn out differently, is because of the unique personality and characteristics of you, the protagonist, you, the hero or shero of your story. The way you look at the world is uniquely different. It's like a snowflake. It's a fingerprint. It's different. And when you bring someone into your world, suddenly it expands their perceptions and they see the whole world in a very different way. Like, I got to write about the daughter of a serial killer, and this was my second book that came out on Oprah. And what was extraordinary about it is that there had never been a book like this before. Um, there had never been something exposed quite so raw and real in this type of frame. And the victims' families of her father at first were really up in arms. And they're like, "You're profiting from your father's killing." And that was not what she was about. She was the benefit of everyone healing. And in telling her story so raw and real, that the ones who chose to read it, to understand more about her father, but also what she'd been through, suddenly they're like, "We never realized that you were just as much a victim of your father, but in a different way." And it opened the door, Maureen, for this incredible compassion to come forward, and for ties to be made. And Melissa is now a producer in LA, and she's opening extraordinary doors, and she's known for being the first one to bring compassion to Hollywood. And I really love that about her, because it was her uniqueness that opened that door. And so each of us has a beautiful, special power. And it's in not trying to write the book that everyone else has already written, it's in expressing your own self in the most unique and beautiful way that you can.
And within that, there's someone waiting for you to bring their story, to bring them forward. They've been waiting to, and there are people that we discussed before we got on. The world is hurting.
Mm-hmm.
People are hurting, and that the message and the urgency is even more dire now than going forward. And that place, standing back to hope, your message is the hope they've been waiting for, like a drink of water.
Yeah, they're hungry and thirsty for your story. That is for certain.
So what you do, because I want to get into it, I do want to throw in the word ghostwriter and the different paths that people have, that the what are different ways, and in the inspired story, what are different ways that people can move forward with their story, and then you support them in that? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I do that I absolutely love is to provide an accelerated experience. And doesn't matter where you are on your writer's journey. We've had people just about to finish their books, and we've had people who are just come with an idea. But we have an accelerated experience called the Inspired Writers Retreat. And it's where that unique story can come out, where we get an idea of what is your 1, 3, and 5 year plan. How do you want this book to leverage where you want to be? So there's business and visionary things to it. Then there's also the smart outlining of it. Are you doing this in a way that is going to get you the best results with your readers? Because there's so many, I mean, there's thousands of ways to write a book, but what is most effective? So we work on those effective outlining. We do go into the hero's journey, and we make sure that people are using that understanding of this hero's journey that's so remarkable, and that they're expressing it in a way that the reader can really get it and feel the triumph at the end. A lot of people who have lived through things, sometimes they'll stay a victim to those circumstances. And what a book reader wants to see is where you've become a victor, where you thrived so that they know they can do it too. So we focus a lot on that. We also have a chef that comes up so that all of your food needs are taken care of, even if you have special needs. And we just focus on your book. And we have experiential exercises that you cannot get online or in a classroom, but in our intimate setting of about 15 authors on a beautiful lake, we're able to do these exercises where you become a more immersive writer and you walk away with skill sets sometimes you didn't even know you had inside of you, but ones that you will never forget in your writing and connecting with other humans. And we do some exercises that help you to overcome imposter syndrome. As I was talking about, creatives get this, like, who am I to write a book and who would even read this? And what is that all about? And sometimes we have really deep set fears inside of us. And so, in a very sacred and safe space, we bust out of that. And they get to be in, or you get to be in, with other authors who are busting out of their own. And then you get to be each other's greatest fans. So when your book comes out, you've got a whole slew of people that are here to support you, and vice versa. And you get immersed in a brand new place in life of just a huge support system. So that's one of my favorite events. I put it on at least twice a year, sometimes in Ireland and other countries, but at least twice a year. And I love that. So that's one thing that we do. When we're not too busy, we supply some live classes, and I only take up to 6 students at a time for those, because I get my eyes on your homework and then I give you feedback, and it's very, very valuable. Right now, what has been exceptionally popular is executive one-on-one coaching or two-on-one coaching with the editor that we like to utilize in this. And you've met her, Hannah Rose Lyon from Castle Lion Editing. And so, yeah, so we do some really accelerated work together, and people are getting their books done, which we absolutely love. And then there are times that we take on ghostwriting or co-authoring projects. I have to be limited in the number of those that I can do, and very selective as well. Because for me, you know, how you and I were just talking about how important it is that the world receive these extraordinary stories, that there are some that really have an opportunity to make a huge social impact. And those will generally be the ones that I will select. And so there's all kinds of ways to get involved, from the very beginning stages all the way through launching your book. And I love that, you know, we're just getting started, but we've been doing this for, you know, over 10 years and have now evolved to the point that we can walk you from beginning to the very end of your journey. And we also have people that we take through agents in New York when you have one of those stories, a big reveal story that New York would crave.
I love that. And the piece that you're coming through with is that within, when you have the courage to step forward with your message, that the power is not to do it alone, is to not only find a mentor that you trust and sees your vision even before you do, and whether it's community too, because that resource of community to buffer, to hold you, to hold space, to see things you don't see, is what you go the distance, is what keeps you moving forward.
Absolutely. And what's wonderful about that is, instead of it being an isolated, insular experience, you get an expanded experience well before you go to publication. And what's wonderful about that is, you know, is that your book ends up being enhanced and more accessible to worldwide readers because you did the work, and because, again, you're not insulated or isolated. It's, you know, you've expanded yourself to be able to be open to feedback and to recognize, wow, I've got something so powerful here. I can write small, stay small, act small, be small, or I can expand my opportunities by raising my courage to that energy level of, you know, of great love. It's like I was talking to an author yesterday, and it makes me tender, but she is an older woman that spent her life looking for love. And, she was adopted. There were all of these rises and falls in her story. And then at the very end of the day, she recognizes she is that love. She doesn't have to go cling or search or be codependent or any of that. And then now she has this thriving community around her, a coaching business. She found love. She found all of these things. And that was part of her journey to go from being a victim of feeling broken, unworthy, insignificant, to recognizing that she is love and is this power. And then she's created all of these wonders. Like, it's just beautiful to watch authors unfold before us.
And it's more fun.
Yes, it's a hell of a lot more joyful, that's for sure.
So I'm going to do a little plug here. So the early bird special still on for the retreat that's up in October. This is going to get out into the, again, evergreen. But for now, those that are listening here, there, and okay, do you have a free gift for us?
Yes, if you go to yourinspiredstory.com, especially if you're one that has been a little nervous about getting your story out and wondering, do you have what it takes? There's a free program called Author Unleashed: Crushing Your Fear. And I highly recommend it. A lot of the different principles that I would teach and talk with you about are in that program. And I would love for you to partake of it. And I think when you're done, at the end of the day, you'll say, you know what? I am gonna jump into this. I am gonna take the step. I am gonna risk all of my vulnerability to be able to tell an extraordinary story, because you have it in you.
So there's actually two links below. There's the website, there's a free gift, and there's also the link to the retreat, which is in October. Early bird special still on, and it's filling up because, again, Bridget said there's only 15 spots. So this is a fun one. Thank you for coming on today. And I'm thrilled that we get to bring our orbits together and bringing people forward and having fun doing it.
Me too, Maureen. And I'm so excited that this expansion of people's gifts, that what you see and what gets to be out in social media and what gets to be out in a bigger way in terms of visibility. Because again, if people don't have eyes on you and your book, they don't even know it exists to buy it. But being able to work with Maureen and other people, it's one of those incredibly enhanced ways to get more eyeballs on you and eyeballs on your book, and to raise your platform and to be able to become the leader that you're emerging to be. So thank you for your gifts, Maureen. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. And the piece that I have the privilege of being oftentimes the first interview for bestsellers. And so oftentimes they want to go back behind their book. And that's not where they get to go. Similar to, they get to bring their story forward. They now get to be their brand, and they get to tell their story. And that's where I come into this. And how much fun is that?
It's beautiful fun. It's beautiful. And I get to see what happens when they get into your hands. So that's wonderful too. Thank you.
Till next time, everyone, again, Bridget Cook Birch. And again, Inspired Story is the web. Everything, get the links below. Go grab your free gift and start bringing your story forward, because it matters.